All right, welcome and thank you for being here this evening. I'm still covering for Dwight. He came back today, but he's not feeling well. So I think he'll be back next week. Today, as I promised, I brought a resource that I got from my counseling studies, and I'll share with you guys if you guys like to buy it. It's very small, little resource. You can buy it used in Amazon for like 3, 4, $5, right? So the whole title is 20 Surprisingly Simple Rules and Tools for a Great Marriage. And this is Dr. Steve Stevens is the author. Everything I have, I'm going to show you, just give you a little bit of, there's 20 of them. I don't think we'll get through them, but I wanted to give you like an insight, a little bit of a taste of this tool, which I thought it was really good. This is not the only thing I have that was given to give out to people. Homework, I got homework books. I got all kinds of stuff. I'm pretty sure Dwight does the same, as he has done it for years. He's been counseling for years. But I found this one to be like really good. So we'll go through them real quick, and if you guys have any questions, any comments, we can do that, talk about that. So basically, again, if you are interested, after you hear some of those rules, come by and I can show it to you, but I can send you an email too if you want me to with the link and so on and so forth. So there's 20 of them, and he said more rules, right? we don't like rules. We don't. I know. Look at brother back there quickly. No, we don't. We don't need more rules. But guess what? When you talk about the road or driving, there's so many rules, and they're needed. And we from the Old Testament, we see all the rules that we have. We still got some rules today in the New Testament, do's and don'ts, right? There's not as many of them, but we still have them. And they're, God, when He give it to us, is for a good reason, right? I believe so. And I think, again, this is all, as I explained to you the format, you'll see this is a Christian resource. So it's just not a worldly thing. It's a Christian resource. So I believe it's really good. It'll be kind of like, it gives you the rule, number 1 through 20, and it always gives you a really nice prayer, a really nice passage for each rule, and then a practice. So it gives you 3, 4, 5 things to do to practice the rule with your spouse. So I won't read them all because it would be way too long, but that's kind of the format: rule, prayer, passage, and practice that you get in this little resource. And number 4, and we'll get right into it. Number 1 is to make your spouse a priority, right? That's the number 1, I think. And he says, like I said, everything I tell you basically comes from Dr. Stevens. So he says that in order to thrive, your marriage must be your number 1 priority out of all things in this world. And that includes your children, right? It is your wife, it is your husband that becomes number 1. And guess what? Your spouse needs to see this every day, Dr. Stevens says in here. So as we know, this is way easier said than done, right? Because, you get married, sometimes you get married early in life, and then things start to get complicated. Bill starts coming in, you start having children, demanding jobs. There's so many things that can come into our lives that can make this rule not as simple or as easy as it sounds to make your partner that priority. But when you think about it, a healthy marriage benefits not only yourself, but it benefits your children because they're looking at you. You're being an example to them, right? So we have to be really careful, and other people as well. When you're in church, people look at you, people look at the example, so it benefits a lot. So that's basically a little bit of that rule. I think actually all the rules are pretty self-explanatory. When you read them, you kind of get them. But he has like 2 or 3 pages of each rule in here, so he gives some good stories. He's been counseling for like over 30 years, only marriage. He's a marriage counselor, so that's what he does, and he gives us some really good insights into what he has experienced through all those years. So that's the number 4. So the number 1, then you get a prayer. You read that, If you get it, you can use this one too. If you want to use this one, I'll lend it to you as well. Um, but the passage for this one is Ephesians 5, verse 33. He says, "Nevertheless, let each one of you in particular so love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband." And some of the practices, and I put in here that I'll read one or two. I won't read many of them, but I'll give you an example so you get a taste of what a practice would be of making your spouse a priority. For example, number one, he gives four in here. But the first one is tell your spouse that she is at the top of your list, and promise her that you won't let anything push her from that rightful position. That's the first thing, like a practice. Number two is next time your spouse asks you to do something, do it without excuse, procrastination, or complaint. So you get the feeling that you really get some practical advice here. So I'll move right to number two. This is important too. Number two is accept differences in your marriage. And by now we know that God has created each individual in this world unique, right? We all unique, and we all bring things to the relationship that are different, right? So we have to understand that some people are introverts, some people are extroverts, you got some spenders, you got some savers, and the list goes on and on. So there's so many differences that we have to do that. And when you think about God, kind of has a sense of humor because sometimes, or a lot of times, opposite attracts, right? So that's kind of God's sense of humor there. But when we think about it, most conflicts, he says here, that are not about major moral or ethical issues, but sometimes or most times are about just small differences that we have, and we just can't get over those things. So as we learn to accept those and accept that we won't always have it our way. When we know that we're different from one another, it's not always going to go your way, right? And that is a good thing. So, but when we realize that, it becomes a lot easier. So here again, you get a prayer. Verse for this one is Romans. And again, if you want to say something about these rules or an experience that you have had, if you don't agree with the rule, we can talk about it, I guess, here. And whatever you want, have any questions or anything like that. So he said, you can't disagree to these rules. Okay. So he said back there, you can't disagree. So you accept the differences. But yeah, absolutely. The Romans 15:7, Bible says, accept one another then, just as Christ accepted you, in order to bring praise to God. And most of these things I'm reading from the NIV, these verses. So let's see some of the practices in this rule. Will be number one. Let's see if I have the right one here. Yes. He talks about taking your spouse to dinner, or make a list of the many differences as you can think of. Thank your partner for those differences. And then he says, number two, the next time you have an argument with your spouse, ask yourself, is this really about preferences? And then try to see the issue from your spouse's perspective. You might even try doing things his or her way. So those are just two practices on this rule. Any comments, any questions? And accepting differences? If not, rule number three will be to listen carefully, right? And he says in the title, surprisingly simple rules, right? But again, sometimes easier said than done. So number three is listen carefully. So he says here, based on his experience, that the number one complaint from wives who divorce their husband is that their husbands don't listen to them or take them seriously. That's the number one complaint in his experience, right? So, and I heard I watched Dwight's lessons before he left, and he talked about this. Men and women are proven, many different researches and so on and so forth, they're wired different. We are different. Men and women are definitely different. And it's just, like you talk to a man, within the first 3 sentences, you got to get to the point. You got to make your point, make it known quickly, right? It's not so with wives, right? So wives kind of yearn to connect, and most time that means, talking. And that's just, and I think Dwight repeat this in every lesson. I think he's making it a point to bring this point to light that we are wired differently. So, and we need to understand and learn those differences. That definitely would help. So, really listening is, he says, Dr. Steven says, it's an intimate activity, and I agree with that. So here's what he says: we must listen. We must listen for more than just words, what is being said, right? So we trying to think of tone of voice, the mood, the needs, the fears, hopes, hurts, things of that nature. So we must listen carefully to our spouses. Get the prayer. Verse for this one is James 1:19. He says, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry." So, and let's see what he has here for practice. I know I see, no, it's not a practice, but he says, stop, look, and listen, right? We heard that if you were in the army or in the military, you heard that you were told that, stop, look, and listen. But one of the practices here is, he only has 3 for this one. Number 1, the next time your spouse talks to you, put down whatever you're doing and look her in the eye. And he put her here, right? So make an effort to truly listen, okay? That's a practice that he gives. The next one he gives, he said, when your spouse talks to you, practice repeating back to him what you just heard. So that's another good practice there, and you'll get those. So that's rule number 3. Listen carefully. Let's move on to number 4. Oh, time is flying by. So number 4, very simple. Compliment daily, right? Compliment daily. And basically everyone loves a compliment. If you say you don't, you probably lie, right? So he said, Mark Twain once said that he could live a full month on nothing but a single compliment. Isn't that true? So, and of course, while most of us, probably all of us, enjoy a good compliment, most of us, starting from here, back here, we're not very good at it, right? I really have, it's for different reasons, right? In my case, for example, probably my mom and dad were not as, compliment givers, right? So I'm really bad at it, right? So I got to work on that one, definitely. But we need to keep that in mind, to give a compliment daily. So, and he puts 4 different types of compliments for us to practice. The first one is the easy one, possession. If you got something, oh, that's a nice car. That's a nice ring. That's a nice dress, whatever, right? So possession is the first one. Appearance, that should be an easy one for us to give, right? Because we like each other. The third one is behavior. The person does something right, and then you compliment on that. And the fourth one is character. So find those things, those traits that your spouse or your partner has that are worthy of a compliment, and do compliment that different ways. So those take practice. But we need to make sure that we do that. Compliment daily. Yes. Sincere, absolutely. 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 So he just said that for those that are watching, that you make sure that the compliment is sincere. And Dr. Steven talks about this. It has to be genuine, right? And you can find a lot. And those 4 categories that we did, you can definitely find a lot of those to give on a daily basis. So they has to be genuine. Amen. Thank you for that. Anybody else? That's good. Thank you. So yes, that's number 2. So you get the prayer. And it's a really good prayer too. If you're doing this with your spouse, it's a really good short prayer that you can do. But I won't read, because we definitely don't get through 1 or 2 of the rules if we read the prayer. But it's in here. Very good to practice and to do that together. So passage for this one is 1 Thessalonians 5:11. Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. So that's a great verse for that one. Let's see, one of two of the practices. He says, let's see, let me turn the page. He says here, basically, one of the practices, give your, give your spouse one compliment on his appearance right now. Then make it a point to look for things to compliment every day. Number two, make a list of all the things that your spouse has done this past week. Reflect on the energy, effort, and sacrifice these things took. Thank your partner for doing this thing. So that's kind of just two practices from this list. This one has four. So that's number four. Number five, it's another one that is very important. Work together as a team, right? When you have a marriage, work together as a team. So, and he says, Dr. Stephen says that it's very easy for couples to get out of sync, right? And start working against each other. So we have to be really careful with that. We need to. I love this one. Every couple needs to understand this, and not only that, but becomes allies. Communicate and defend each other, coordinate efforts, and help each other out. So, again, sometimes we forget that we are in the same team. That's as simple as that, right? Sometimes we get caught up in our needs and our wants and so on and so forth, and we forget that we are one in Christ and start pulling our own separate ways, and that's where we get into trouble. So he says, your spouse is not your enemy or competitor, right? That's not it. So the two are supposed to be one. If one win, both wins. If one loses, both lose, right? So we need to keep that in mind. I like what he says here. This one is definitely a long one on the book. But as you guys work together as a team, there's at least 5 important factors that need to be present. And I like they put a little formula here. Number 1, and he explained this in a good paragraph for each, but number 1 is commitment plus communication plus coordination plus consideration plus clarity equals contentment. I love that formula, right? It's commitment plus communication plus coordination plus consideration plus clarity equals contentment. Love that one. So get the prayer. The passage is Colossians 3, verse 23. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. And this applies for us as well. And anything we do in this life, we're really working for the Lord, right? So let's see what kind of practices you get here. He gives a good 3 in this one. So the first one is what you do is you go to a place that holds special memories for both of you and talk about the following commitments: to never purposely hurt each other, to protect each other's back, to be faithful emotionally and sexually, to keep promises, to be honest, to never threaten divorce, to love each other all throughout your life. That's number 1. Number 2 is you find a project around the house or the home for the two of you to work on it together until completion. So those are kind of 2 practices of rule number 5, which is work together as a team. Number 6, let's see how many of these we can cover. Number 6 is mind your manners. Very, very important, right? Number 6, mind your manners. So, and we need to, this is, I don't know, but it seems like this is going away a little bit in our culture. There's a lot of people being rude out there. You know, you see it more on videos now, right? Because before, but we need to never forget to say, please, thank you, excuse me, I'm sorry. You know, those things that become really hard sometimes to say. So he says, if you love your spouse, take a moment to consider your actions. Think about how you speak and how you act to him or her, and then ask yourself the following 5 questions. And again, this is just a couple of things from 2 or 3 pages. So he says the following 5 questions. Are you respectful or are you rude? Are you polite or are you inappropriate? Are you mannerly or are you crude? Are you patient or are you demanding? Are you courteous or are you selfish? And now, if those are the 5 questions, if you focus on these questions. So you if you focus on them, then you would need you would know to need you know where you need to fine tune, if you will, right? You can do this yourself. This is where you analyze, you self analyze, and see where you're weak the most in these sections, right? So he says that Henry James, who was a 19th century American novelist, he said this: three things in human life are important. The first one is to be kind. The second one is to be kind. And the third one is to be kind. You guessed it. So, and you know 1 Corinthians 13, and you read around verse 4, Paul said that love is what? Love is kind. And that's kind of like the verse in here as well. So we read that. 1 Corinthians 13, the passage for this rule. It's 1 Corinthians 13, 4 and 5. He says, love is patient. Love is kind. It doesn't envy. It doesn't boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrong. So that's the passage. And let's see. Let's see what kind of practices he's had for this one. It's only 3 for this one. He says, number 1 is say please and thank you to your spouse at least 3 times a day. All right, so you see, there you go. 3 times a day. Number 2 is go through the list of the 12 times to say I'm sorry. There's a list in here that said that gives you when you have to say I'm sorry. Circle the situation where it's the hardest for you to say this, then apologize to your spouse for at least one of those things. So those kind of like the practices there. But I'm not sure if you guys have anything to say, anything to comment on this, but watching our manners is not going to only help in the marriage, it's going to help all the way around, right? So that's number 6. Let's see number 7. This one might be funny. And this when you read this one, it's because he said in this one to rent a video. So it's kind of old. I forgot to look at the date. But number 7 is watch less TV. So that's the rule, and I think it's definitely important to watch. If you're married, watch less TV. Now, TV is not bad. I don't think that's what he's saying, but it can definitely do bad things to your marriage if you're not careful. It can pull you apart. It can steal precious moments, filling them with some irrelevant and sometimes highly questionable material. And that's plenty of that out there on the TV when you turn it on, right? So we have to be really careful. So, and he says the TV obsessions comes in all kinds of flavors. There's the sport fans. There's no sport fans here, so we don't have to worry about that one, right? Sport fans. There's the sitcom junkie, history buff, soap opera addict, and the news nut, right? So those are the same. There's some of the categories there. But there's also the medical drama. I like those. Lawyer shows, reality TV, and the list goes on and on, right? So there's so many things out there to entertain us. So he has 5 TV rules that I think were good, and I'm going to read them to you from page 38. Here's the 5 rules that he has. Let's see if I can. Yeah. He says, therefore, here are a few rules that might help you to tame your TV habits. Number 1, choose ahead of time what you really want to watch and only turn on the television when that show has started. When the program has ended, turn off the TV before the next show begins. Number 2, decide how many hours of TV per day are appropriate for your family and then discipline yourself to stay within those limits. Number 3, don't watch TV alone. Decide that you will only watch programs that you and your spouse both want to see. Sit together on the same couch and watch those shows together. If your spouse really doesn't want to watch something, don't do it. Number 4, talk about what you watch. And number 5, find a show that you both enjoy. Then once a week, set up a date time to watch your special show. Make it a tradition that is fun and romantic. So I think that was pretty good. 5 TV rules, he calls them here in the book. So again, because TV could be addicting, yes.
Traffic during the highest road truck
See,
Wants to know what kind of story the ice and road truckers fall on.
reality TV, right? I think. I don't know. But yeah, because TV could be addicting, um, you can replace it with things like maybe listening to music, some other hobbies that you can find and you guys can do together, right? That's what he recommends here. So um, definitely, yes. Yeah. Well, he said find at least one TV show, right? One TV. But yeah, you can put two or you can put picture in picture, I guess, right? As long as you sit in the same couch, then you're fine. All right. So the verse here is Philippians 4:8. He says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything of excellence or praiseworthy, think about such things. And the thing is, when you're watching, I think the reason behind this verse is when you're watching TV, when you're listening to music, anything that's going inside of you, the ears, and the eyes, that's feeding your brain, right? So we have to make sure that we're doing something good. Whatever we're feeding ourselves or our inner person of the heart, we have to make sure that it is good. So I definitely agree with that verse there. Now let's see one more practice. Let's see. He only gives 3 here. Um, he says, sit down with your spouse and read the 5 TV rules together. We read those and determined to put each rule into practice for 1 week. After the 5 weeks are over, talk about the rules you like to try for a full year. Number 2, find some relaxing music that you both like and play it at the end of the day as you both enjoy the closeness of each other's company. So and I believe that he really loved music and his wife, and they found a way to get away from TV a little bit and do music together, and they enjoyed that. He tells a story here in the book. So that's number 7. Number 8, and I think this is important. Find time for fun, right? I know, and you can think about it when you were dating before, right? When you were younger and you were dating and you were exciting about all things, having fun, going out there doing things. That's easy in the beginning, right? But again, life gets a little harder as you go. You grow older, you have children, so on and so forth. So, again, before marriage, most couples know how to have fun, but once we're married, stresses of life definitely bills. So you got to pay bills. You have a meeting to attend. You have comes to how you get a house. You got to do the lawn. You got to do all things. Children, you got some unforeseen difficulties. So sometimes if we're not careful, right? If we're not have purpose on this, we'll forget about it, and we just don't do it. We don't have anything to do that is fun out there, something that is really fun, right? So I think I definitely like this rule, and here's what he says, and I have 2 quotes. First, Dr. Stevens says, when a couple plays and laugh together, they're creating an emotional connection that will be necessary to help them get through the conflicts and the crisis of marriage. I think that's very important. And this is somewhere else. Dave and Claudia Arp, you might know them. They're the founders of Marriage Alive. They say that having fun is a serious business. Okay? Sit down with your spouse and talk about having fun. Discuss it, plan it, budget it, and do it. Right? And I think that's good advice. So let's see. We're at 38. Rule 8. Definitely not going to make it. But here's a few suggestions. I think I'll read a few from page 46. He has a few suggestions here. Basically, he says you can bake cookies together. You can plan out your dream vacation, dance in your living room, go on a hike, play your favorite board game. This is where he said rent a funny video. You don't have to rent a funny video. You can just put AFV or something. Play it on your phone. He says you can visit a local amusement park, pack up a picnic lunch. There's so many things. Those are just some suggestions that you can do, but we have to have fun. That's the rule. Find time to have fun. right? I think it's important. So practice here. Let's say the verse. Passage, Ecclesiastes. You guys know this passage. Ecclesiastes 3, verse 1 and verse 4. There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens, right? Time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. So definitely appropriate verse for this rule. He has some practices here. Let's see, only 3. Number 1 is make a list of 10 things that you did before you were married that were fun. Reminisce with your spouse about these and schedule time together to do one thing on your list sometime in the next week. I think that's a good suggestion there, right? A good practice. So rule number 5, moving on. Number 9, sorry. Rule number 9 is simple as well. Do the little things. Do the little things. So sometimes, especially guys, we probably mistake that, the bigger, the better, right? So he says, nah. Meanwhile, he says our wives just simply wants to know that we love them, that we care about them. That's all they want to know, right? So we're talking to the guys now. So, and big plans, they are nice. They can be nice, but more often than not, it is that little thing, those little things that really count. So here's what John Gottman says. He's a top researcher in the area of marital satisfaction. He says that it is the little movements towards our spouse that increase our contentment with each other. It is the smile, the opening of a door, the back rub, the kiss on the cheek, the kind word, or the gift of their favorite ice cream. That's simple, right? The little things. So I think he has a point here, right? Sometimes we get focused, right? He says that one rose can probably do as much as 1 dozen or 2, right? Because it's the act. And doing that, and he says in the pages, doing that often, doing the little things, right? So that's rule number 9, do the little things. The verse or the passage for that one is Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. Very appropriate. Do to others what you would have them do to you. And so that's the passage. And let's see what kind of practices he has for this one here. He has 4 for this one. Number 1 is find something special you can do for your spouse one day this week. It's okay to start simple. Does she like coffee in the morning? Start it, brewing it while she's in the shower. Does he like a certain magazine? Make an effort to pick up a copy for him. Number 2 is take a few minutes and write down as many of your spouse's preferences or special interests as you can think of. If you're not in the habit of observing your spouse, you may be surprised at how few details you know. So keep the list in and an accessible place and update it as you learn more about your husband or your wife. So those are some of the practices there. There's 2 more, but we'll move on to rule number 10. So that's number 9, do the little things. Number 10, this is a good one too, I believe, is celebrate the top 5. And what he says, the top 5 for Dr. Stephen here are basically, this is his list. Yours might be a little different, but he says your wedding anniversary, birthdays, Mother's and Father's Days, Valentine's Day, and then Christmas. This is Dr. Stephen's list. To him, those are the top 5, right? And basically, celebrations are, he says, are a way of saying, I love you, right? You're special. I'm glad I married you. You're appreciated, and thank you. And if you hear that list, we should be saying that every day, right? But we mess up, and we don't do this every day as probably as we should. So this top 5, he says that's when you get an opportunity to make up, right? And so don't forget that. Don't forget anniversaries. He tells a story here of a guy that forgot his wife's birthday. He goes for counseling. Forgot his wife's birthday, but it gets worse. That's when they got married as well. So he forgot her birthday and their anniversary. So he was in trouble, right? So he made up. So the story is very funny, and you can check it out if you get this resource. But I think again, this is a time, this is an opportunity to make a nice statement. Especially, he talks about this, especially when you put some thought into it, right? When you birthday, anniversary, and you really think about what to do for your spouse, that's a special. That's a good thing. So, verse for this one is Romans chapter 12 and verse 10. It says, "Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves." That's important, I believe. And let's see what kind of practices he has for this one. Let's see, top 5. So that's only 3. So first practice for this one is talk to your spouse about the top 5 and ask how she would most enjoy spending each one of them. Take careful notes about what you might do in the future. Number 2, sit down and make cards for the next 2 special days. In each card, write at least a few lines expressing your love. Save each card until a few days before the holiday is celebrated, and then mail it, right? And number 3 is make plans for the very next of the top 5 on the calendar. Decide on a gift to give, something nice to do, or other individual touches you can add to make that day extra special. So those are good practices there for that rule number 10, which is celebrate the top 5. And number 11, and I think this is powerful as well, is simple. Think positive. Very simple. Think positive. So in negativity, and we study this a lot in psychology, negativity is devastating, right? And it can suck the life out of any relationship, and it can even lead to divorce. So you definitely want to avoid this. I'm going to read this because even though Dwight has been saying that men and women are wired differently, I don't want to get in trouble. So I'm going to read it from the book. Dr. Stevens said, hold on, in page 61, here's what he says, right? I thought this was good, so I'm gonna read this little paragraphs here. He says, although negativity does cross gender lines, okay? This is Dr. Steven talking from 30 years of experience. He says, I have found that men comment more on their wives' negativity than the other way around, okay? Wives tend to point out their husbands' insensitivity, stubbornness, and silence, but husbands usually stick to negativity when complaining about their wives. I've counseled many men who sit in my office and say things like this. I said, nothing will make her happy. No matter what I do, it's not good enough. If everything I do is wrong, why try? You must understand, and this is him after he's here, a man. He said, you must understand that most guys truly want to please their wives. Let's see if I say. But if they are regularly confronted with negativity, sooner or later they give up. So they'll stop disciplining the children and talking to their wives altogether because they simply face too many negative responses. So this is Dr. Steven again, based on his experience. So we have to be really careful. This negativity can go both ways, but in his experience, he hears the wives complaining a little bit more, or the husbands complaining a little bit more about this. So we need to be really careful about that. And he talks about, and I don't have this here, but he talks about the stress that negativity can cause. And how bad, I know you guys probably have study about stress and how bad it is for your body. It's really negative. So, and there's some reasons of why people do this, concentrate on the negative stuff. They're called cognitive distortions. But again, thinking about positive isn't just about avoiding stress or chronic cognitive distortions. It requires us to focus on the best qualities of life. And I like what Paul says in Philippians chapter 4. Remember when Paul says that he learned to be content, how, where? In whatever situation he found himself. Whatever, right? When all means all, everything means everything. In whatever situation that Paul says, he learned to be content. And also in Philippians 4:8, he talks about thinking about good things, all the honorable. We read that verse already, but he said that's what we have to dwell on, not on the negative. But it's easy for us to do that. So the passage here is 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 18, that says, "Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." Give thanks in all circumstances, right? Sometimes I say this all the time. Sometimes we read and we just read past things that mean a lot. When God says give thanks in all circumstances, that's what he means, right? Even in difficult ones. So let's see what kind of practices he has here. He has maybe 4. So number 1 for this one is talk to your spouse about the times in your marriage when you've been the most negative. What triggered your negative attitude? That's a question. How can you avoid these triggers in the future? With your spouse, explore ways to turn your attitude towards the positive. I think that's a good practice. Let's see, number 2. Number 2 says, agree to play a positive building game with your partner. Each time either of you says anything negative about anything, that person must put a quarter in his own personal negative jar. They do that at work for the cursing, right? So when the jar is full, his spouse gets to decide how to spend the money. So those are fun practices, right? To do. Hopefully that would help with that. So that's rule number 1. Think positive. Number 12, and I think this is really good as well. It's simple. Fight fair. Number 12, fight fair. And every couple fights. If you say that you don't, once again, you're a liar. Right? That's what John says in first. If you say you haven't sinned, you're a liar. So, but some fight frequently, some fight occasionally, sometimes. Some battle with silence. Others are loud. Some explode and is over. Others pick and complain constantly. This is Dr. Stephen talking. So Dr. Stephen here, he compares fighting styles, and I like this. He compares fighting styles with that of animals. He has a few animals, right? So the first one is a turtle. He says, if you're a turtle, you withdraw inside yourself. If you're a deer, you get away as fast as you can. The shark, he says, you go for blood. The donkey, he says, you stand your ground and don't budge. Chameleon, he said, you give them whatever they want. And if you're an elephant, he said, you give in, but you never forget. So you need to decide what animal you are, right? And when it comes to fighting. So, but here's what he says. Whatever your style is, learn to fight fair. Learn to fight fair. And if you don't learn this, you will leave a trait of hurt, anger, disrespect, fear, disappointment, and unresolved conflicts behind you. There are 7 crucial principles to fight fair that I want to share with you, hopefully to pick your interest if you want to get this resource. And they are page 79, 69. So, 7 crucial principles. Here they are. And I'm just going to read the principle because it's a little paragraph that explains them all. So I'll give you the principles, and I think they'll give you an idea to fighting fair. Number 1, choose the right time and the right place. Number 2, show respect. Number 3, deal with only one issue at a time. That's number 3. Number 4, stay in the present. Number 5, never interrupt. And he gives you a 3+3 rule here. It's pretty good, where you give your spouse 3 minutes to talk without interrupting, and then you get 3 minutes. So again, the explanation is really good. Never interrupt. Number 6, end with resolution. And number 7, always make up after a fight. So those are the 7 principles to fighting fair, and I think they're really good when you read the explanation on these things. So the verse here is Romans 12, verse 17. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, and be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. That's the verse. And let's see how many practices here. You get about 3. And number 1 says, practice. Sit down with your spouse and determine each of your fight styles. Are you a turtle, deer, shark, donkey, chameleon, elephant, or some other animal? So number 2 is determine which of the 7 principles to fighting fair listed in this chapter is the most difficult to you. Go to your partner and apologize for the times you have struggled with this, and then discuss how you both might improve in this area. So again, some really good practices. And I think we're going to close with this one, but I think this one is number 13, and it's one that's going to save you every time. Forgive. Okay? Rule number 13, forgive. In every marriage, again, if you fight in every marriage, guess what? We're going to have to ask for forgiveness. Okay? We're going to hurt each other. It's going to happen. You might do something stupid on an hourly basis, daily basis. I mean, it happens, right? You guys know this, right? It does happen, so you might be insensitive, you might be rude. There's so many things each other will do to one another that are just plain wrong, okay? We are all to blame for this because we're humans, right? We make mistakes. Now, Dr. Stephen here in his books, he compares, and we got 5 minutes, he compares marriage with a dance, and I thought that was pretty good. So I'm going to read that description for page 73. He says, a marriage is like a dance, like dancing, right? No matter how careful you are, periodically, you're going to step on your partner's feet, right? He says, some people have sensitive feet, and some people have tough feet, but hurts still happens. If you step on a foot, it is important to seek forgiveness. If you have been stepped on, it is best for you and your marriage if you grant forgiveness. Without forgiveness, the hurts build and the dance stops. So I thought that was really good from Dr. Stephen there. We need to forgive. And that's not an option, right? In the verse here, the passage is Colossians chapter 3, verse 13. Bear with each other and forgive one another. And if any one of you has grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you, right? So I think that's a really good way to close there. Forgiveness, there's more. I'll give you all 20, right? But I'm not going to tell you all the little things. But I give you all 20 so you get an idea. That was 13. So 14 would be to welcome each other home, right? If you walk outside of the home, you come home, welcome each other, make it nice for the person to come in when they come in. I work together with my wife, so we come in the same time, but we still can find ways to make it nice to come home, right? Number 15, he says, go to bed at the same time. And he explains why he has that rule, but go to bed at the same time. Number 16 is develop mutual friends. That is helpful. 17, you heard this one before, take a date, go on a date every once in a while, especially if you have kids, do that, but all the time. Number 18, make love, can't get away from that one. Number 19, pray for your spouse. And number 20, treasure your spouse. I think this is awesome. So I hope that I pick some interest. And if you want to have a great marriage, here's a little tool that you can use. And again, you can come by, or you can send me an email, text, whatever, and I can give you the resource. It is you can find easily in Amazon. They're used. I think they're new, like $10 or something, but used $3, $4, $5. So hopefully this was, again, pick your interest. And as Dwight continues this class, we can definitely continue to improve in our marriages, because I think that's the key to not only the church, but to the whole world, right? It is marriage. And Christ is preparing us for the real marriage. We are the bride of Christ, aren't we? So this is just a test that you have right now. Christ says clearly that when we go up there, there's not going to be that kind of marriage, right? but we are going to be married with Him. We're going to be together with Him forever as a marriage should be. This is a good practice, yes. Title of the book is 20 Surprisingly Simple Rules and Tools for a Great Marriage. And that is Dr. Steve Stevens. Dr. Steve Stevens. All right, so let's close with a prayer really quick. Father, we thank you so much for this time. We thank you so much for allowing us to talk about marriage. We just ask you to continue to bless Brother Dwight as he continues to talk and teach about our marriages. Help us, Father, to be better in whatever resource, whether it's this resource or any resource out there, Father. There are plenty. Just give us the willingness, Father, to put the best foot forward for us to be the best we can be to make our marriages great. We need that not only in this church, we need it in all the churches, but we also need a Father in the whole world. So we just ask you again to help us become better partners and spouses, Father. We love you and we thank you. We ask you to bless everyone as we leave this building. Keep them safe till we get together again. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you.